Ever notice when you're browsing social media that every time someone posts a theistic argument, especially a creationist argument, that it's always just a stupid lie? Either it's true but doesn't support their position the way they say it does, or more often, it's not true at all and is not only false but based on a series of warped distortions and faulty assumptions, too. Case in point, someone recently posted this image on social media. Of course, they ignore that a fact is a point of data that can be objectively verified, and evolution is volumes of data from several independent fields of study that can all be verified regardless what you'd rather believe. But notice that the worst criticism that believers can think of is to say that evolution is a belief system like their own position is. They ignore all the facts of evolution and pretend that it's a mere belief like theirs is. They even perhaps unwittingly admit that their belief is not based on proof. They're lying about evolution, of course, but what they admit about belief systems is true. They tell me I'm lying when I say that faith is not based on evidence, but then they prove that I'm right when they say things like this, when they say that they know that belief is not based on proof. So I called the guy out, saying that I have proof that the claim in this image is wrong. The guy who posted it reacted with a laugh emoji. He reacted to every post with a laugh emoji, which shows that he's just an immature and insincere troll. This video isn't really about him, but I need to add that he replied with another stupid meme. This one. Now, I was prepared to correct every error on both of these memes, but I opted instead, before wasting my time for somebody who's not even going to read what I say and just, post there another laugh and another stupid image, I decided to perform a test. I said I would correct all of his many errors systematically, one at a time, starting with this one. To explain, I've been an atheist activist for a quarter of a century so far. I'm on the board of directors of American Atheists, 501c3. I was even president of Atheist Alliance of America years ago. I've been to conventions and rallies and conferences and meetings on 5 continents. I know an awful lot of atheists. But I don't know any who believes that nothing produced everything. Yet I see that stupid lie repeated every day. So let's correct that mistake first. Every model of cosmogony I'm aware of begins with something, never nothing. Most physicists don't even believe there ever could have been absolutely nothing. Not even Lawrence Krauss believes there was ever absolutely nothing. He and I have talked about this a couple of times. The very first law of thermodynamics says that material energy cannot be created or destroyed. So it wasn't. We've no reason to believe that it was. Instead, astrophysicists from Carl Sagan to Sean Carroll hold that the universe is, in some sense, eternal. I can show discussions among physicists to that effect, including some with me involved. But let's be clear. To be atheist, you do not have to believe what no atheist alive believes, that everything came from nothing. Again, it's amusing how the only way religious fundamentalists can insult evolution is by projecting their own faults onto it. Creationists are the ones who believe that everything came from nothing. If you tell them that, they'll deny it, of course, because they're liars. But the Institute for Creation Research explains explicitly how they are required to believe in creation ex nihilo, out of nothing, because the Bible says that God called into existence things that did not exist. That means God spoke everything out of nothing. Abracadabra, poof, there it is. Everything from nothing. That's what creationists believe, not atheists. I told him to correct that error first, and then we would move on to correct his next mistake, and then on to the next one after that. He reacted, of course, with a laugh emoji and replied with another stupid, irrelevant, false, nonsense meme. So I wrote him off as having only a playground-level mental capacity, which is a fair assessment because I think I was smarter than he is when I was 11. But there were other creationists in that thread, all wanting to argue their favorite misunderstanding. If you think you can defend evolution, then tell me how life began. Because they don't know the difference between evolution and abiogenesis and cosmology. They don't know that they don't know what they don't know. I know they're not ever going to correct themselves either because, ironically, they're arguing in bad faith. if they were honest enough to correct some error once it's pointed out and never repeat that same lie again, then how is it that after years of arguing with scientists that they still get absolutely everything wrong on every single point every time? They're not correcting themselves. They're making themselves wronger, a word that only applies when we're talking about religious belief. So rather than waste my time trying to reason with the unreasonable, with the pathologically inane in this online asylum, I pointed out that meme to each one of them, and I told them to correct that lie before we begin to discuss any new topic, because I need to know if they're going to be accountable. None of them would. They would come up with distractions, they would come up with obfuscations, they'd try to push it back onto me that it's somehow my fault, but no, none of them would admit that that statement was not true. They all know that all they have are straw man distortions and projections of their own faults, and they seem to be aware that they're never going to have any more than that. So they're determined to hold on to what they got, invalid though it is. I told them that if the truth matters to you more than whatever you'd rather believe, then you would call out lies and correct them even when they come from your own side. Since we're talking about evolution, abiogenesis, and cosmology, then my side of that argument are scientists who are pedantic. If you're promoting science and you get anything wrong, your own allies will come down on you mercilessly, so you'd better get everything right. But if your belief matters more to you than whatever the truth is, then you will defend both the lie and the liar when you see them as allies. Even when you know for certain that what they said is wrong, you will not correct them, because being honest would be seen as disloyal, breaking ranks. I know there are believers out there who can be honest, and those are the only ones I can reason with. The rest only want me to waste my time. Because faith means no more than dishonestly asserting baseless speculation as if it was a matter of fact, and then refusing to admit when you're always wrong. So I broke it down as simply as I possibly could. I know that religious faith both defies and decries logic, but I gave him a syllogism so simple that even a flat earther could understand it. Premise 1, I am an atheist. Premise 2, I do not believe that everything came from nothing. Nor does any atheist I know, and I know a lot of them, including several scientists and specifically physicists. I don't know any atheist alive who believes that everything came from nothing. Maybe somebody said something like that once upon a time, but the vast majority of us certainly do not believe that. So, therefore, conclusion, to be atheist, one does not have to believe that everything came from nothing. I can't imagine an argument that is more obvious. Yet, none of the believers in that thread would correct any error, no matter how solidly proved, not even when they're not the one who made the error. They would still defend that other guy's lie, even when we all know that it's false. Because remember that creationism is just lies, lying in defense of lies, to believe in lies that are based on lies. So they will never admit any inconvenient truth, because there is no truth to their position whatsoever. That's why they need faith, to deny evident reality and make believe what they know is not really true. If they would admit anything so obviously indefensible, even in the face of clear proof, then they certainly would admit anything more complex that requires reasoning. It reminds me of my favorite quote from the Founding Fathers, from the second U.S. President, John Adams. He said, "The priesthood have, in all ancient nations, nearly monopolized learning. And ever since the Reformation, when or where has there existed a Protestant or dissenting sect who would tolerate a free inquiry? The blackest Billingsgate, the most ungentlemanly insolence, the most Yahooish brutality is patiently endured, countenanced, propagated, and applauded. But touch a solemn truth in collision with the dogma of a sect, though capable of the clearest proof, and you will find you have disturbed a nest, and the hornets will swarm around your eyes and hand and fly into your face and eyes." So I get off Facebook, go to YouTube, where the very next online idiot tells me that it takes more faith to believe that everything popped into reality out of nothing than to believe in an intelligent designer. I see this lie multiple times a day, every day, year after year, and that'll continue because they refuse to learn. Never once have any of them ever said, oh, you don't believe that? Well, never mind then. Nope, nope, because that would require honesty. It's not just a few dishonest idiots out there anymore either, I'm sorry to say. This cerebral zombification is communicable. Stupidity is spreading. Social media implies that half the country are brain-dead dolts now. That's how we became an idiocracy. And there is no way to cure them because they have neither honor nor shame. They're actually proud of their inadequacy. The only way to fix that would be if some of their own group were to say, hey, stop it, you're making us look like liars. But they're not going to do that because they are liars. They know that we know that they know that. So there is no point in hiding it anymore.